I had Kirby over here, Gus Malzahn on the other side. And it's literally, we just, my family, we're dancing, we're having fun, but you got two big universities right here rival universities looking at you like, okay, at the end of the night, we try to figure out who you coming on with at the end of the day. I would say the team I used to hate the most was LSU. And I could kind of see Coach Saban's face. He hated slow practices. We would go mid-practice and he would make us start over.
This episode of Beat Everyone is brought to you by Broadway Joe's Fantasy Sports. Inspired by football legend Joe Namath, embrace the thrill of daily fantasy sports like never before in an app coming this fall.
Hey, welcome to Beat Everyone. I am Ben Flanagan, and we are here with one of the biggest recruits in Alabama football history, one of the best Crimson Tide linebackers of all time, an All-American, first-round draft pick. He's played for the Tennessee Titans, the Atlanta Falcons, the Dallas Cowboys. Rashaan Evans, how are you, man? Thanks for doing this.
Man, I'm doing great, man. I'm glad to be on, man.
Well, hey, man, it's great to see you. Great to hear from you. I know folks are keeping an eye on you in your post-Alabama days, Alabama playing career. And this is obviously a big transition time for Alabama. You were there right in the middle of the golden era of the Nick Saban tenure of Alabama. You were part of a lot of the championship success in Tuscaloosa, but now it's a new day. Like as we're talking right now, it's SEC Media Days, and Kalen DeBoer is spreading the new word as the Alabama head coach. And, he and his staff at Alabama have put together an incredible recruiting class loaded with five-star talent, something that you obviously know a lot about from your time as a player. You signed with Alabama in 2014 as part of a number one recruiting class, and you were one of the highest-ranked members of that class. So what was it like to be recruited by Nick Saban, and what can you tell us what you remember about that process?
Oh man, it was a very fun, very the process in itself was unique because you had, at the time when I still was getting recruited by Coach Saban, he was still on the incline of his career as well as being, a winning coach. So the hype was there. Players that I had played with in high school, they were there. One in particular, like I always talk about, Reuben Foster at the time, who was one of the big reasons why I came to Alabama. And then, you got to think about too, Kirby Smart being there, who's at Georgia right now doing his thing, and having those type of personalities come after you and kind of just, kind of give you a picture of what it would be like, once you step foot on campus. And then also going through the process of kind of just, taking action and bringing you to, the University of Alabama and showing you, some of the rings that they had. And then also showing you some of the players that are already there and players that are getting recruited there, other five-star players that are there. So, the way they brung, the whole thing, full circle as far as how they approached me and how they recruited me, man, it was one of the most amazing experiences for me. And then, just the cherry on top, being able to be in a winning type franchise. I call it a franchise just because of the fact that it was another NFL team to me at the time, and it still feels like that. So, and just for me, just having that opportunity to be able to be in the room of some of the best coaches that you could possibly find or possibly know, with, Coach Saban being the head guy and then having Kirby Smart right up on them. And then you got a list of guys, Lane Kiffin, you got, guys that have, coached at a high level too. Just having all those guys in one room, and it was an amazing experience, man. It's one of those things you will not be able to have again. It's something that can't really be duplicated. It's one of those things, like you said, a golden era. And, I think it'll be very difficult to be able to repeat that type of level of, star power.
I mean, you mentioned Saban, Kirby, and Lane. I mean, that's an unbelievable dynamic there where you've got personalities like that on a coaching staff. But I want to focus on Kirby for a second because he was a key recruiter for you when he was at Alabama. And, he's had a ton of success as a recruiter now that he's at Georgia. What do you think makes Kirby such a great recruiter, and what was he like to play for as a coach?
Kirby he's just raw. When he recruits you, he's very straightforward. He kind of him and Coach Saban have hung out with each other for so long they rubbed off on each other. So, you can kind of see resemblance in the way Kirby approaches you, the same way Coach Saban approaches you. They're just straight up with you, you know, men of men type guys. The things that they say really matter, and they when they walk in a room, they command that type of respect. And at the time when they were recruiting me, man, it was that type of understanding. And some of the things Kirby was saying to me as far as what Alabama was and what Alabama would be, I mean, it was literally spot on. Just the simple fact that at the time Kirby, he was recruiting me at the time, and he was kind of telling me about being able to play next to Ruben. That was one of the biggest reasons why, like I said, I came to Alabama. Ruben was one of my best friends, and him going and taking his talents to Alabama, and also being able to have some success there and being able to see at least for a season to see how he panned out. That was another kind of dynamic that kind of Kirby put out in front of me as far as the things that they can do with me as well. Even though I was an outside linebacker, they still view me as a guy that was, being able to be versatile and play multiple positions. And, by using Ruben's situation and other guys that were already there, it made everything more attractive for me to come to the University of Alabama. And just the swag, it was a swag there that you couldn't really put a name on. You can use a lot of vocabulary to kind of, talk about it, but, thinking about it now, that type of swag, that type of, conversation that we had, the way they carried and, operated in that building. And, it was from top to bottom. I mean, from Coach Saban all the way down to the janitors, all the way down to the teachers, all the way down to the people that walked on campus. I mean, it was literally, everybody had an understanding that, that it was about, breeding success and being successful and wanting each individual that had that A on their jersey or had that A on their shirt, that, you were going to be successful as well. So, he created that image and created that type of dream in my head to the point where it was convincing enough for me to go ahead and come on board.
Well, Rashaan, I know that your former head coach at Alabama doesn't love hypothetical situations and questions, but I mean, the way you're talking about Kirby here, and I know you got tremendous respect for both coaches, right? Mm-hmm. And you were so fortunate to be able to play for both of them.
Most
but
definitely.
if Kirby was a head coach at another school like he is at Georgia right now, and you've got Kirby and you've got Saban both recruiting you to come to their school, who do you think you'd want to play for?
Oh, that's probably one of the hardest questions I've had. I gotta be, one thing I've learned, over the years is always about loyalty. And it's always about, understanding that even though things may seem great at that moment, you got to be able to look out years from now. And at that time, Kirby was a great coach, but who's to say that Kirby would be what Kirby is today if he hadn't went through that process when we were there? So I'm always have to hang with my guy, Coach Saban. At the end of the day, I mean, he was a man that I truly respected, not just for the football aspect, but for the fact that he was just straightforward with you. The things that he said, his words mattered. And the way he treated his players, he treated his players like grown men. He didn't treat you like a little kid. He's not going to do that with you. He doesn't even really have time to do that. He has enough on his plate. I mean, when he was there, he controlled and managed everything. So when it came to how he was handling a lot of the players, I mean, he treated us like men, and it kind of made us grow up in a bit. You got guys that are next to you, guys that are the same age as you, even though you're still young, maybe 19 to 23 years old, in that range. You got guys that are breeding grown men as far as how we think, how we do things. Even though Alabama was what it was, there was some wild aspects and wild times with going to that university and being on that team with those guys. But at the end of the day, man, the expectation and the standard that we used to always talk about, I mean, it was one of those things you had to literally live up to because Coach Saban demanded it, and he demanded it around anybody that was wearing that A. So you had no other choice but to kind of be programmed, become that at some point.
I got one more on Kirby here. So people paid a lot of attention to your recruitment, and there are stories about the recruitment where I remember one that there was a family party where either Gus Malzahn or Kirby Smart or both of them showed up, and maybe there may have been some dancing. going on. Is that true? What do you remember about that?
That was actually my granddad's birthday party. I think it was maybe his 80th birthday party. And if I'm not mistaken, I just want to make sure that this is the same thing we're talking about. So it was literally in one room. I had Kirby over here, Kirby, and then I had Gus Malzahn on the other side. And it's literally, we just, my family, we're dancing, we're having fun, but you got two big universities right here rival universities looking at you like, okay, at the end of the night, we try to figure out who you coming on with at the end of the day. It's that type of vibe. So, seeing Kirby and them partying, hanging out, and then you see Gus and them come out on the dance floor, they're hanging out, chilling, relaxing, this fun. It was a interesting dynamic because, it was tense, but at the same time, you kind of saw the interaction at that point. It's kind of like, okay, yeah, we're going to enjoy this moment, but at the end of the day, it's going to be about business on where we try to go with this. So, it was so funny because a lot of times I caught myself, enjoying my time, but at the same time I was getting pulled to each corner. There would be small conversation like, hey, how you doing? Boom, we want you, we love to have you, but, at times, I really didn't even have really time to really enjoy any time with family because it was just that type of interaction with both parties. So, but it was definitely one of those times where, you look back and you're like, man, those are things you just can't duplicate. It's hard to really just say that coaches nowadays, even back then, you didn't have the NIL stuff going on. You didn't have, a lot of the media as big as it is now with players, and to have that type of, want to and having two big time universities who are rivals come and be in one room. I mean, it was definitely an experience.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that because most people, they don't understand what the life of a 5-star recruit is really like. And when you have all these elite coaches from elite programs constantly contacting you, you're on all these visits, there's so much riding on the choice that you make. It's going to determine your future. Is that a good life for a 17 or 18-year-old kid, or is there more stress and anxiety that maybe a lot of people don't realize is there?
A lot more stress and anxiety than you could ever imagine. Just on the simple fact that, like you said, your decision is going to be probably the biggest decision you make because at that point, it will determine your trajectory and where you're going in your career. Whether it will work out and you play your 3 to 4 years at this college and you go on to the next level, or you become a guy that has to constantly transfer back and forth from different teams to kind of get where you want to go, or it doesn't work at all. You got those things running in your head. And then until you kind of bring all the outside exterior things, you got the media, you have the fans, you got family members, you got friends, you have, all of those things all in one, people who are swinging you, giving these different conversations, giving you these different emotions, painting these different pictures of what it would be like if you were in this jersey, if you were in that jersey, if you were in this city, if you were in that city. So you got all these things that you're kind of juggling in your head, and you're only like 17, 18 years old. The only thing you only worried about is just playing football. So, it almost speeds up your maturity in a way because, this is really important. This is really serious. But at the same time, too, it's kind of fun because you might not notice it at that time because everything is happening so fast. But later on down in life, you will realize that experience in itself is probably one of those experiences you'll never see again. Just the simple fact on the time and placement and where things were happening and things that were going on during that time. Like I said, this was pre-NIL. This is pre, big time media, that's growing each and every day like it is now. So, and then you got to think some of the coaches that were also in that room and coaches that were coaching at that time, look at where they're at now as well. And that just kind of brings an even different picture of how significant that time was. So, just coming full circle with it, man. It was one of those golden eras, like you said.
Well, this is Alabama podcast, and so we talk about the Iron Bowl sometimes. And your recruitment was almost like an Iron Bowl within the Iron Bowl, and you have a really you've got a really unique perspective as somebody who grew up in Auburn. Your dad played for Auburn, and you were obviously heavily recruited by Auburn. What did you think, and what do you think is unique about the Iron Bowl rivalry compared to a lot of other heated rivalries in college football?
Man, I would say a couple of things. It would be, for one, the history. I would say the intensity, as far as, you go to different states, you go to different cities, and you can kind of tell, what makes it go. You can kind of tell whether it's an NFL team, whether it's a baseball team, whether it's hockey, whether it's, any other sports that's in that city that makes that city kind of have some energy. But when you come to Alabama, it's the first things you hear is Auburn and Alabama. That's the first two things that you hear. So, having those two major organizations, having those two major colleges, and having also people who have family members that go to these different colleges, and then you add on the fact on the games in itself, and then you add on the fact on winning percentages, and then you add on the simple fact of just everything all in one, and that makes it what it is. And I think toe to toe, if you stack it up in the rankings against any other rivalry, it's definitely up there in the top three to me, only because of those simple things: the history, the people. I mean, the simple fact that they live and breathe football here. So, I mean, regardless of whoever's picking up football, it means something. You could be playing backyard football, and you could see. Matter of fact, I remember it vividly, and I will go through recruiting, and I will go through these tailgates, and you could feel the intensity in the tailgate before the game even happens. You can see people talking crazy to each other, like, "Oh, this is what we're gonna do to you," and da da da, and people cooking and having fun and those type of things. So, all of that in one makes it what it is, makes that rivalry special. So, and for me to be able to be a recruit during that time, to be able to experience not only Auburn's side, but also experience Alabama's side, I was able to see the whole thing full picture, and that's why I rank it up there at the top. I mean, it just has a different dynamic.
Well, you mentioned the visits and the tailgates. I mean, I want to ask you a follow-up there because, I mean, you hear about recruiting visits and what, like, people really don't know what they're like. The recruits obviously can talk about it afterwards. I mean, you don't have to, you can say Alabama. Maybe Alabama was the right answer here, but look, you had the career that you had. You're an Alabama great, but I do want to know, which school, where did you have the best visit when you were a recruit?
I mean, that really depends. I mean, are we talking more of about feeling like feeling wanted and feeling like you belong, or is it more about feeling like this is an opportunity for me to be great? You know what I'm saying? As far as that dynamic, I would say UCLA was my best visit. I was out there studying LA. It was fun. They take you on these nice visits. They take you on a nice trip, and you go out there in LA, you see the city, you see all the lights, the glamour, the Hollywood street, you see Rodeo Drive, that type of stuff. That's fun for a young guy who has never been to college, who has never really been exposed to a lot of things of that nature. So it was a different aspect of me, because I'm from the country, I'm from Alabama, so being able to go on that side of town or side of the United States, it was a different dynamic for me, so it was exciting. But as far as the fact on, knowing that I was in a place with, Alabama and Auburn, these, very highly traditional, a lot of history, really truly love football, that type of dynamic, that's a total, it's almost like, it's like night and day. So it's really hard to say. As far as just fun, I would say UCLA, but as far as just, feeling like, okay, this is what football feels like, bar none, it is I would probably say at number one, Alabama, and then at number two, Auburn, right there.
There you go. I don't think anybody was expecting that UCLA, but like you said, man.
Nobody would expect. I've been to Tennessee. I've been to all different places. I've been to the Vols. I've been to Georgia. I've been to Florida. I've been to all of these different visits. So at that time, and I've seen all the universities. I've seen all those campuses, and even been able to meet other players that was on these teams. Florida State. I've been to Florida State. To bring it all in one, I got to give it to the University of Alabama and Auburn right up under that.
You experienced what it's like to be an elite recruit. We've talked about this, and a player back in the fully amateur era of college football. How would NIL have changed your experience as a player if that had been a thing at the time?
it would have been life-changing. It would have helped a lot of us as far as some of the guys that came from really bad, homes or really bad areas and had situations where they had to kind of take care of their family while they were in college. You had guys that were in college that had kids. So that type of dynamic of having that NIL, blessing, that would have definitely helped those guys and probably gave them, a better chance at being able to be successful. But overall, I think long term, it would have killed by now. If it would have happened then when I was during that time, NIL, by now, I don't know, man. It probably would have easily killed the game almost a little bit, just by the fact on the mentality of the players. At the time when I was coming in, you had to really kind of, for one, you had to earn your stripes, and then two, you weren't gonna come in and just be a guy immediately like that. You kind of had to, bit by bit, year by year, being able to interact with players, being able to interact with coaches, and being authentic. And that's kind of how you gained your respect. And not only did you gain your respect from just the university or the team that you're on, but you also gain the respect from the media and also other teams. So nowadays it seems like things are a little bit kind of it becomes a little bit more materialistic now. Now it's about the money. Now it's about how do I look. Now it's about what do I gain about it. It's no more team like type vibes anymore to me. It seems like it used to be. Will I say that it completely has damaged it now? No, I wouldn't say that. Will I say that maybe in the next couple of years that maybe college football may kind of lose its thunder a little bit like it used to be? There's a high chance that it possibly will, just because of how players play, how they act, how they treat how the tradition of college football and what it really means. And going down the line now, money plays a big part in the way people act nowadays anyway. So to say that you want to give $1 million to a guy that's coming straight out of high school, who's never really had this type of money before, maybe the parents have never really had this type of money before, you also still giving him a lot of pressure as well. You're introducing him to a lifestyle, which, a guy that's coming out of college into the NFL, that type of thing. You're getting people from all over the place. Now they're asking you for money. You don't know anything about money. You don't know how to manage your money. You don't even know how to say no. So you get in that situation, and also at the same time you're trying to get an education, and then while you're getting an education, you're trying to perform on the field. So you're just adding more stuff onto this player's mindset as far as how he approaches the game and even how he approaches life in a way. The money is good. It allows you to be able to do more things. It allows you to feed your family. I love everything about it. But, like anything, once you engage and once you get introduced to that type of thing, there's also some consequences, there's some downfalls to it as well. So I think NIL back then, it would have helped a lot of guys. It would have put us in a different position for a lot of guys to be able to, help family and all that. But mindset wise, I think it definitely would have changed a lot of players and how they play today.
Well, it sounds like to me, no regrets about your experience, right? You don't look
No
back
regrets.
thinking, man, I wish I had NIL. You like the way it was.
I like the way it was. It's one of you get kind of like a bragger right in a way. Back then, even then when I was in college, still to this day, I get older guys who were in that era who had kind of had the same experiences, and they brag on, oh, well, shoot, back in my day, we had to do this. We had 2 days. We had 3 days. We had to do this. I remember I didn't have any change. I had maybe a couple pennies in my pocket, and I used to wear the same clothes for a week and still had to go play football. Those type of stories. And that's what made the game exciting. It was like, man, you went through all that and still had to balance your studies, still had to try to be an elite player and still accomplish that all in one. It's one of those type of things. And to say that guys now don't have any pressure, I wouldn't say that. Especially like I said, listen to those things of, having that type of money at that age, having the possibility of people from all over the place coming, and now they're wanting money from you, and you're having to balance family situation with that money. Money brings a lot of things. Nothing really changes when it comes to money. You could change everything around you materialistically, but the problems are still there. So just overall, man, I think back then I have to really, really appreciate that gift that was given to be able to live and experience that era and make me the person that I am today. So I would say that.
Well, Rashaan, you mentioned having to earn it at Alabama, right? Like, even when you're a 5-star recruit, you've got a lot of control in terms of where you're going to go.
Yeah.
You're, like all these coaches are hanging on by a thread to find out where you're going to be. They're actively recruiting you, and so you've got a lot of power there in that dynamic. But when you get to Alabama, there are other 5-star guys. There are 4-star guys. There are walk-ons who are competing to get playing time. So what's that like, getting on the field once you're there and once you're competing with these other guys who want to play the position that you're playing? They want your job. And what's it like to fend that off and get on the field?
I think to a lot of guys, it can be a culture shock in a way, just because of the fact that you're coming out of high school, everybody's looking at you to make all the plays. You're looked at as the guy. You're, team, the city, everybody loves you. You're on the newspapers. You just, that mindset in itself carries some type of weight. So you walk and talk and you come in the building at the University of Alabama expecting that same type of vibe. And when you don't get it, you get to the point where you're like, wait, whoa, am I really as good as people say I am? Am I really as dominant as I think I am? So you get in those type of things in your head. And then you think about the process of going through your first year where you're coming out of high school, you go through your first year, and then you're realizing, okay, they're not going to just give me a starting job. I really got to work for this. I really had to go against all American guys that played in college football for 2 to 3 years, and they've been in Coach Cochran's weight room training sessions for a couple years, and they're walking around. They got everything understood. They got it going. They got an understanding. They know their role, and it's a little intimidating in a way. You know what I'm saying? You're still trying to find your way through that, even though you're a 5-star, but you're still trying to find your way to figure out where do I rank on this list. You got a lot of alphas in the room, a lot of chiefs, and not enough Indians. You get what I'm saying? And you get that type of vibe. So, just by handling it in general, from my own perspective, and guys that are trying to have that or having that type of situation and are going into college, you got to have that mindset of, look, I'm not here to try to be just giving advice. I'm trying to take as much advice in. I'm trying to get as much coaching in. I'm trying to be as smart and as understanding, as coachable as I can possibly be, because you got to think, at this time, you're playing against some of the best of the best. You're getting coached by some of the best of the best. It will be smart of you to come in there with an open mindset. Don't come in there stiff. Don't come in there thinking that everything is just going to be your way. Don't come in there trying to muscle guys, because it's not going to happen. And you just got to kind of let time do its thing. You got to let the work, stacking those days, do the talking at that point, because, going up to the office and having a conversation with Coach Saban on why you're not playing it's one of those things where he's just going to lay it down to you. He's going to be like, look, you're just not ready. And it'll be just that. You're just not ready. We don't feel like you've been in the film long enough. We don't feel like you practiced long enough. We don't feel like you've done this enough. Until we see that, then we will allow you, to get some plays first. And then we'll allow you to grow into that starting role. And it's that slow process that kills a lot of guys, because they don't have that type of patience or that type of resiliency to want to go through that type of pain of being on the sideline, going through that pain of not being that guy anymore, and kind of have to start from ground zero all over again. So it's one of those. It's an interesting dynamic, but I will say, guys who have made it through that and been able to have successful after that and being able to thrive through that, it shows up later on for sure.
Quick follow-up there. You mentioned Scott Cochran. What do you remember about Scott Cochran and being in that weight room with him? How would you describe him to people?
Energy, intensity. It just, when you'll be walking down the hallway, you'll be coming out of the locker room, the way the building was set up. You go out the locker room, you make a left, you go all the way down, and the weight room's on the right. And before you hit that door, you hear, yeah. You hear the music booming. You hear weights clacking, and you like, okay, this is football. And Coach Cochran had that voice, and he had that mannerism, and he had that character, and it matched everything around it. You know what I'm saying? You get some guys that are weight trainers, you get some guys that are coaches, and you got this big organization. You know, it's football. You thinking it's supposed to be rough, tough, and they're just soft spoken, and they're just player guys, and it works too sometimes. But Coach Cochran, he was just raw, man. He was intense. He didn't, you might walk in there and he might just knock you over or something. You know what I'm saying? It was just that type of vibe. And he made, I would definitely say, I would go out on a limb and say that Coach Cochran was one of the most important reasons why we won so many games. I mean, the amount of, time that we put in with him, it was probably more than we had with Coach Saban and Kirby Smart. I mean, you're going through off season a full year. In collegiate football, this is a yearly thing. Other than your spring break, other than that month, that month maybe after camp or whatever, right before the season, that type of time, you're really still there with Coach Cochran, during that 4-quarter period, doing your spring training, and then you go into summer training, you're with him the whole time. So being able to be around him, he's literally energetic every day. There's not a day that he misses where he's inconsistent to the point where you're like, okay, what's wrong with him? Is he off today? Is something wrong? No, he's like this every day, and he expects you to be like that every day. So, it almost, I would say, guys that have been around him have got rubbed off from him, rubbed off from him, just the simple fact of how he is, being energetic, being just grateful of being a part of the organization Alabama was, and then finally, having to go on the field and have a guy that's turning up on the sideline, throwing towels around, pushing you all, getting you hyped up, and then you hear his voice. His voice in itself is enough to get you going. So, Coach Cochran, man, he was a jack of all trades, man. I think even though he was the weight training coach, I do really think he could have been a position coach, just because of his intensity. He knows how to get guys going. So that's what made, Coach Cochran very dynamic.
Rashaan, you had a moment that a lot of great Alabama players experience. You were drafted in the first round back in 2018. And, there are so many guys who played for Coach Saban in the NFL and so many now at this point. And, one of the coolest things I think for Alabama fans, and I'm sure for players too, is seeing those post-game photos where you've got two NFL teams that have so many Alabama players on the roster, and they take a moment to take a picture together after games. What's it like being part of that fraternity, that guys who came from Alabama are now playing at the highest level?
Oh, man, it makes you feel good. It makes you really look back and realize, man, I was among some really, 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 really great players. Just not just great players, but great men. These guys, from head to toe, man, they carry themselves like successful people. And that's the reason why they're so successful. There's a reason why there's so many guys that are from Alabama that have been in the NFL and played in the NFL and had success as well. And, it's a method to the madness. When we got programmed in Alabama, we took all of those learnings and all of those things that we learned from Coach Saban, and we just transitioned it back into the NFL. And, if you look, like I said, you look every year, they make a list of guys that are currently playing, guys that have played, and we're up there, every year. So it just goes to show you the significance, man, that we were a part of. And as a player, it definitely makes you realize, man, like you said, man, it was a golden era. It was a time where, guys really, really, really had to earn the stripes. And you see it now today. And if you walk up to these guys and just meet them in person, you can kind of tell the era in itself where they came from, just on how they act, And, a lot of these guys, as much success and as much fame that these guys have had, they're still humble, they're still hungry, they still train hard. I mean, you go look at Derrick Henry's workout videos. He still trains like he just got into the league. And every guy from Alabama trains like that. It's not just Derrick, it's Minka Fitzpatrick, it's Marlon Humphrey, it's guys, Deron Payne. You go on down the list, Josh Jacobs, you go on down the list. These guys, we all have that same pedigree. You all have that same makeup when it comes to how we approach the game. So, you realize, man, you were around some really, 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 exciting times and interesting people.
Well, Rashaan, we end every interview with former Alabama players with a lightning round. So I want to go through a series of these questions, whatever you may remember. Take your time with them, too, if you want to. But first one, what SEC team do you hate the most?
I'm going to be honest with you. A lot of people would say it got to be Auburn. And I would say, no, it's not even Auburn. I would say the team I used to hate the most was LSU. And the reason why I hated LSU so much was not because, like, Auburn was more kind of like, it's a rivalry. We hated each other. But for me, it was a different dynamic because I had family there. I had people that I went to the high school there. So it was different. It was hard to really kind of, you know what I'm saying? But LSU, it was like, those guys, you could tell that they hated us too. It was always about winning at that moment. It was always who had the bigger strength coaches, who had the bigger players, who had the bigger, loudest stadium, it was that type of vibe with LSU. And you could tell, go back in history and look at all the games that we've had with LSU. And they've always been physical every single time. Don't get me wrong, the Iron Bowl is physical, most definitely, but it was something about that LSU game for me that it was a little more personal than a lot of the other ones.
I got you. It looked like it on the field too. That it was personal between the players.
And then Coach Saban being from there too, he made sure to let us know how important that game was too. So he had a little extra chip on his shoulder when it came to that school.
Rashaan, favorite Alabama teammate? I know you got a lot of them, but if you had to pick one.
Man, that's hard to say. It's like if I pick one, I'm gonna get a call the next day. Hey man, I thought we was cool. Man, it's hard to name one. I don't even know if I can answer that, man. Because all of us were like, we were so close. It's hard to say just one. We all lived in the same area. We all had, grew up with each other. So it's hard to say. I just had one. I mean, to say the only player I can really think of just off the top of my head will obviously be Ruben. Ruben was one of my guys.
Okay. Well, yeah. Let me stop you there then. I don't want to get you in trouble with your other friends. I want to ask you, give me a Reuben Foster story. Favorite Reuben Foster memory at Alabama?
Got a lot of those. Oh, okay. So the one I was saying would be in practice. And I remember vividly this one time. I think it was maybe one of my first couple practices with Reuben. And me and Ruben, we boys, And me and Ruben, I remember even from high school, it was, we used to kid around in high school. We were so athletic. We didn't really take practice that seriously. You get what I'm saying? Ruben was up as this, he was 250 pounds. He was running 4.5, and he was doing this all at 18, 19 years old. I mean, he was a freak of nature. I mean, the guy would be out there, he could just literally not practice at all. And he would go out there on Friday nights and he would light it up. He was that type of player. So we didn't really take, for us, we took football seriously, but when it came to just high school in general, it was a fun time for us. We were just glad to be young and be kids and just play football. But when you come into Alabama, it's a totally different dynamic. So I remember it was a practice, and I had kind of forgot how, serious, things can be when it comes to collegiate football. And Reuben Foster, he reminded me so fast, and it was one play in particular. I remember one time we were out there in practice, and I think we were either doing maybe an inside drill or it was like a team drill, and everything was relaxed. At the time, for some reason, we started slow, and I could kind of see Coach Saban's face. He hated slow practices. We would go mid-practice, and he would make us start over. He's that type of guy. So at the time, Ruben was just out there. He was, playing linebacker at the time, and I'm over on the sideline. And then before you know it, QB takes a easy handoff. We thinking, things are moving slow. It's kind of like that little beginning of the practice team period. And then all of a sudden you just hear, everybody's like, whoa, what's going on? Because at the time, the pace of practice was more kind of like a, slow. We just get in the feel of things. Guys are just warming up. We're tight right now. We're sore. Man, Ruben going full speed, 100% downhill. I mean, he smacks the running back. And then at that moment, you saw Coach Saban's face change, my face change. We like, wait a minute, what's going on? Like, we thinking, things are supposed to be just chill. No, Reuben was 100%. He was 100% every dang play. I mean, he wanted to go kill somebody. I mean, even during practice, it's 100 degrees out there, and Reuben out there running full speed, trying to knock a joke out. And I see the running back. He got up just looking like what's up? And now Reuben was like, no, you got the ball. Like, what you mean? You know what I'm saying? So that moment right there with Reuben vividly, just how he was as a player, man. I mean, the way I looked at him, he gave me Ray Lewis type vibes. He was a natural leader. He was a naturally gifted football player. I mean, he had all those intangibles to be what he was. So that was one of the vivid memories I had of Reuben.
Awesome. He was a freak. You're right. He was unbelievable.
He was a freak, man. Yeah.
Rashaan, what was your best play at Alabama?
Man, so many. I would say my best play would be, I would say that Clemson game against Deshaun. I think maybe it was was it 2016? And we were I think we were in Arizona, and we had on the crimson colored jerseys, Deshaun, and that was the year that they won. And I think it was one play, I went straight down the middle, and it was like a blitz. And I grabbed him, but I kind of missed him, but I grabbed him. But then Ryan Anderson and another guy came and finished them off. But I remember that play because that play was really, I don't know how it happened. I really wasn't supposed to just blitz like that. It was more of a spy type mechanic. It was more of me just watching wherever he went. I was just trying to take up time where he didn't get out of the pocket, and it opened up for me, and I was able to make the play. And I remember that play, man, because it was so pivotal that at the time, because, you know, Deshaun, I mean, he was picking up momentum at that time. You know, as many times that we hit him in that game, I mean, that dude was like, nah, I don't care what you do, how many times you hit us, we're going to win this game. And they ended up winning that game. And still to this day, I remember that play just because of the significance in it, in the trajectory. But for some reason, we still couldn't get the job done.
Yeah, that was a tough one. I know.
Man, that was one of the toughest losses.
Yeah.
I mean, we lost off one play, man. I mean, that little match route, he threw it out there, and you just could hear the crowd just like the air just come out of it.
So yeah, I mean, I assume like that's a play you probably still think about a little bit.
Man, I still
every
think
now
about
and then.
that play still to this day. And
Yeah.
it was actually another play. I think it was when he was rolling out, and it was actually that play. He was rolling out to the right, and I was coming backside. And I'm thinking, and I'm running, I'm hoping that if he just hitches one time, if he pump fakes, if he stops one time, I'm going to hit him. I'm going to get there. And you can go back and look at that that one play, and you'll see me kind of scraping on the backside, hoping that he just stops or he tries to do something shake, and that would have been the end of the game. We would have won that game. And those two plays in general, the one I did make and the one that I did make, you know, I would say those probably be the biggest ones. You know, a lot of people would say probably something in, you know, maybe the Georgia game or maybe the other game that we played against Clemson. But that one in particular kind of hit home for me just because of what was at that time in that moment, and then what could have been if I would have just made that play. You know, it would have changed maybe the trajectory or course of history when it came to Alabama winning consecutively back to back. You know, we would have had three rings back to back. You know, so you know that would have been it had never been done at that time, so it would have been super big at that time.
Hey man, that was a tough one, but that 2016 defense was like historic, man. Historic,
man.
Unbelievable.
Historic.
What's the best way to celebrate a win?
You know, the way we do it, shit, we spark them cigars up, and that's how we do it, man. We spark the cigars up, we play our music, dudes in there just having fun. We see Coach Saban come through, Miss Terry come through, the family come through, your family come through, and it's just a party after that win. And that's probably the best time, you know, to enjoy it at that time. And then obviously you know you have Tuscaloosa, you go out there on the strip and you go out there and you just have fun with all the student body and everything, and it's just fun, man.
What's the best place to eat in Tuscaloosa when you were playing?
My favorite breakfast spot was Ramah Jammas. That was my favorite breakfast spot. You know, at the time, the owner of the place, he man, we were real cool, and he he showed me so much love. You know, at the time, you know, he was, you know, basically kind of like a true Alabama fan, what you call it. I mean, he had Alabama all over this place. I mean, you got helmets, pictures of old players, current players. I mean, just that atmosphere that he created over at that place. That was one of the best places I ate at.
Okay, I think people think they know the answer to this, and maybe they're right. If you didn't go to Alabama, where would you have gone?
I probably would have went to Auburn. That would have been the next place I would have went to. And I've had many conversations about how my career would have been if had I went to Auburn. Would I have won a championship? Would I have won a couple of championships? You know, would players that maybe were following me, would they have came to Auburn and you know, made it different? You know, I've had those type of conversations all the time, and you know, it would have been interesting to see what it would have looked like if I did go to Auburn.
What's the best hit you put on a quarterback, running back? Best hit you ever had in your career at Alabama?
The best one, the one I liked the most was one against Tennessee, and he was rolling out, and I hit him, but the way I hit him, he you know, he came down, but I kind of landed on his face. And I think it was like when we played the Tennessee Vols at the time, was maybe my my senior year. And the way I landed on them, they kept replaying the same play, and I was just like, yeah, I like that. That's my favorite play right there.
Hey, Rashaan, what's it like to lose to Tennessee? Do you know?
Ooh, hey, you know what? You know what's so funny? We used to beat them so bad, it's kind of hard to know what it felt like. You know, I mean, to say that Tennessee, you know what's so funny? Tennessee was actually a difficult place to play at. I mean, the fans in general, that dome, I don't know how they designed it, but that dome in general, it knows how to hold noise. And you hear the noise bouncing off each wall, and I mean, you can't hear anything out there. So, but I would definitely say, you know, Tennessee is a definitely difficult place to play, even at that time. I mean, they laid it on the line. Even though we got, you know, the best of every team every week, Tennessee came out there. They would just try to upset us every time they could.
Hey, that 15 game was close now in Bryant-Denny Stadium, but yeah, that was a great win.
We've been in some dog fights.
Yeah,
for sure.
Last two here. Toughest loss in your Alabama career?
It's a toss-up between that Clemson game, and then I would say the year that we actually no, I'll say that one too. That's the third one, but I would say the year that we played Ohio State and we lost to Ohio State. I wasn't even playing, but how we lost, it was so devastating because we just felt and knew we were going to go into the playoffs. And it was one play in particular that I still vividly remember to this day, will give me nightmares, and that's when Ezekiel Elliott, I think he took a handoff or something, and he went down on that sideline. And he took it to the house, and that changed the momentum of that whole game.
Yeah, that was a tough win.
And that ended up being the reason why we lost that game. I think that year, was it Marcus Mariota? Was Marcus Mariota playing that?
That's when they beat Florida State. Yeah, that's when they beat Jameis, Florida State, and then Ohio State. Yeah, beat them in the final.
Exactly. And we were already kind of preparing to play in that game. We were like, man, we're going to beat Ohio State. Then we're going to go into this game, then we're going to win it all. That was the plan. And Ohio State came to play that day.
They did, man. That was a tough one. That was a good game, though.
Man.
Last one, ended on a positive note. Favorite national championship?
I'm going to just go ahead. A lot of times I would say the Clemson one just because of the fact that we played against Deshaun Watson. But that Georgia one was special. It was special just because of how the storyline behind it, how it happened, you know. You thinking about the play in general and specifically that Tua situation, you know, when he had Coach Saban made the change to take Jalen out, and then he put Tua in, and Tua came in there and, you know, had a nice series and had a nice throw to Devontae, and he scored, which helped us win that game. I mean, you know, it was one of those type of plays where you're shooting from half court, clock is one that ran it down, you got the possession. I mean, you got to hit. And when I tell you, it felt like that ball was in the air for like maybe 5 minutes. I mean, it was just floating up there. And then all of a sudden, you see it come down, and then you see a dude in crimson white catch the ball, you're like, wait a minute. He just caught the ball. Wait a minute. He just scored. Wait a minute. That's the end of the game. Just like that. You know, Georgia got you already back anyway. Georgia got the game to win at that point. And you see that play, I mean, you know, I was hysterical after that play. I mean, it was one of those times, I'm like, this is my senior year. I go out like this. I mean, you can't draw that story up anymore. You can't any better than that.
Unbelievable moment. Well, Rashaan Evans, I mean, one of the best to ever wear crimson and white. Thank you for doing this. You've been so generous with your time, man. It's so good to talk to you and see you. Best of luck to you this year, man.
Man, appreciate that, man. Glad to be on.
Thanks for joining us on Beat Everyone, brought to you by Broadway Joe's Fantasy Sports, inspired by football legend Joe Namath. Embrace the thrill of daily fantasy sports like never before in a new app coming this fall. We've got a new episode with Eli Gold on Thursday where the legend himself tells us how he does what only he can do. And fall camp is underway under Coach Kalen DeBoer. We will bring in AL.com's Matt Stahl and Nick Kelly to update you on how the team looks in Tuscaloosa right now with the 2024 season just around the corner. You can find the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please subscribe, rate the show, leave us a review. Thank you for watching and listening.